What's going on, FA Nation? John Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome into the NFL DFS podcast and live stream recording here for week 17. James filling in for Howard Bender here this week on vacation, but you and I have done a handful of these NFL DFS podcasts already this season. This is a pretty big slate here. 13 games, no Saturday games this week, no teams on bye. We have the final Thursday night football game of the season happening tonight. We're recording here on Thursday with the Cowboys and the Titans. We have the final Monday night football game of the season here on the slate, coming up this weekend as well. So next week we have nothing but Sunday football on the main slate, so that will be the largest slate of the season. But just 13 games here and some pretty interesting matchups.
Yeah, some pretty interesting matchups. Thankfully, Dallas, Tennessee, not on the main slate because that is not one of them.
Right.
It's not one of the interesting matchups. Yeah, I mean, we're in part of the year where teams are going to be resting, i.e. Tennessee. We're going to see teams that there's a lot of meaningful football to be played too. Like it feels like this year more than years past. Yeah. Divisions aren't locked up and wild cards aren't locked up.
Man, changing things. So
yeah, so a lot of relevant football to be played. So we're still going to get teams giving it their all and a lot of those starters still in the field. So ready to go, 13 games. Bart Scott can't wait. Here, John.
All right, let's get into it. A quarterback position here. Patrick Mahomes is your top price plays at home against Denver. Jalen Hurts is pushing to play, but still uncertain and probably unlikely to suit up against New Orleans. Justin Fields on the road here against Detroit. Justin Herbert at home against the Rams is your top 4 QBs. Tua, as we know, is in concussion protocol, probably not going to play against New England. If I'm, ranking these quarterbacks here, assuming that Hurts is active, I'll go with here for at least for now. I think I go Fields still number 1, Hurts 2, Mahomes 3, Herbert 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think Fields has as much upside as everyone else. I think it's hard to, build a lineup without Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, in like cash. I don't know.
Mahomes for sure cash games.
Mahomes and cash.
I just worry about the arm with Hurts because if he's pushing to play, like if he's not 100% and he's dealing with the sprained shoulder, like what does that look like for him, right? Like,
well, was that part of the week 15, 17 carry? Jalen Hurts. Like I know he still threw 37 times, but like was the sprain during that game where like they forced it to the ground? And I mean, there's potentially no Miles Sanders as well who didn't practice. So could Jalen Hurts, if he plays, throw it 25 times and have 3 rushing touchdowns again?
Yeah. I worry about guys coming off an injury like that.
That's
the
fair.
only reason I have him ranked where he is. With Fields, you look at it and you're worried more about his pass catchers, but this is a matchup where he is in Detroit. He's inside. We saw him against in Detroit. We saw him against Detroit a few weeks back. He had 147 rushing yards in that game here. Much like Jalen Hurts, right? He can beat you with his legs. Doesn't need to do it with his arm. Maybe Claypool suits up. I know we'll have Komet active for him in this game. So, and he has a dual running back threat there. Montgomery and Herbert are both back behind him. So I do like Fields, especially being inside against this Detroit Lions defense.
Yeah, biggest total on the board too. Only went over 50, 52.5. I think that's risen too. I think that's being bet up. Yeah, I mean it's the best game environment on the board. It was the Seattle Detroit. We've seen Detroit in a multitude of slate breaking.
Yeah, Seattle Detroit was the stack that won everything. So
yeah, and this could be. I mean, we saw Detroit's defense look horrible against the run just last week.
210 yards rushing allowed at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, Chuba Hubbard, Deonta Foreman just tore them up. Even Raheem Blackshear got in the end zone. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard not to like Justin Fields, hard not to like Mahomes. And, I'm with you on the Hurts thing. It's just, if he plays, they win one more game, they win the division. So, like, they're still playing meaningful football as well. So, probably because of shoulder injury, not many people get there.
Yeah, I agree. I think people will be a little bit weary. Good contrarian play if he's active, because again, I'm not sure people will go there. In the mid tier here, I like Tom Brady. I know a lot of people are going to be upset with that idea because he hasn't been very good, but he's been very good at home this season. If you look at his home road splits, 8 home games this season, he's averaging 20 fantasy points. He's got 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's got a 68% completion percentage. This is nothing new. Last season, Tom Brady much better at home than on the road as well. So I know they're going up against Carolina. I know Carolina upset Tampa Bay at home a few weeks back. But again, on the road, that was also the game where Mike Evans dropped the wide open, 70-yard touchdown that was going to be thrown to him there. Just hit his hands, dropped it. He was wide open there down the middle of the field. Probably would have made everybody's days look a little better in that matchup there had they been able to haul that one in. But I think people are going to continue to shy away from Tom Brady because of the fact that he's largely, the perception of him has been unimpressive. But when I wrote up the quarterback coach in week 15 against Cincinnati, I pointed out the home road splits. What did Tom Brady go do? 23 fantasy points, and he's 4% rostered at $5,500. He's $6,100, a little bit more expensive here. But again, home against Carolina, I'm willing to go there with Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the contrarian side of things, because when you just go a couple $100 below, you have likely chalk of the slate Jared Goff at 56 and Daniel Jones at 57 in a pretty good spot against Indiana.
And a lot of people play Gardner Minshew if Hurts is out.
And Gardner Minshew 55. You have 3 guys right there that save you a bunch of money, that allow you to spend up at the skill positions. So I don't think many people get to Brady. I don't think it hurts Tom Brady that J.C. Horn is out for the year as well. I mean, he's an elite defensive player. I don't hate Brady at home. He's clearly been pretty good in warm weather. No J.C. Horn's a big deal. So I agree on Brady. We know where everyone else is going. We know it's Jones, Goff, and Minshew.
Yeah, and honestly, Jones probably the more contrarian of that group. Because of the matchup against the Colts here. But yeah, Goff at home is another one. Wild splits. At home this season, he's averaging 23 fantasy points. On the road, he's averaging 13. So a guy that loves that indoor home cooking. And he's going up against Detroit. Going up against Chicago, rather. In that game against Chicago, again, wasn't his best performance. 236 yards and a score, just 14 fantasy points there. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a monster day. He had a 10 for 120. So we'll touch upon him when we get to the wide receivers. I think he'll be 40% rostered on the slate, just given the matchup. So and Aaron Rodgers is another one, probably a contrarian play here. Christian Watson looking unlikely to suit up. But Minnesota's pass defense has been absolutely brutal. In the quarterback coach that I did, I listed off the guys that have thrown for over 300 yards against the Minnesota Vikings over the last 6 weeks. It was Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, was it Mike White, and there was some other Jared Goff. All four of those.
Whoa! What were you about to say? Finish that sentence, John. Some other what?
Scrub.
Don't you dare.
Some other
put Daniel Jones. Don't you dare put Daniel Jones in that category.
In terms of passing production this year, those guys. And Jared Goff is, to be fair, has been a lot better throwing the football this season. So to give him a little bit of his flowers, mostly again at home, but 330 yards allowed by Minnesota to Jared Goff. Daniel Jones threw for 330 yards. Mac Jones threw for 380. Mike White threw for 360. So guys are throwing all over this Minnesota Vikings defense here. Again, I don't think anyone's going to play Aaron Rodgers. And again, for good reason. He has not been very good this year. 24 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, just 3,300 yards. His season high in production here, 20 fantasy points. He only had over 19 twice. In week 1 against Minnesota, he only had 5 fantasy points. So, again, not anybody's going to go here, but if you want to be different, if you're making a bunch of lineups, Romeo Doubs is pretty free this week. Alan Lazard. And it is a matchup where every quarterback going up against Minnesota that's not named Matt Ryan has gone out there and put up big production recently. So
and dinged up Aaron Jones a little. I mean, I know Aaron Jones was practicing on Wednesday, but the sprain, they wish we would have known it prior to week 16, but they were limiting him with the ankle that he sprained during practice. So just something else to consider for Rodgers.
100% here. Would you venture Jarrett Stidham at all as a min price quarterback here? $4,100 starting at quarterback against the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm really happy for him. I'm happy that he's getting the chance to play here. I'm not going to be playing him against the 49ers. No.
Okay. Let's go to running back. Again, I'm not glossing over the 5K quarterbacks. They're all in play. Gardner Minshew, if he starts against the Saints, amazing spot at home. Looked really great last week against Dallas. And then, of course, Jared Goff in just a crush spot at home as well. So, chalk plays, both of them can put them in your lineup. Some mid-tier contrarian guys and your top price plays will be there for cash games as well. At the running back position, both CMC and Eckler listed with questionable designations, but they've kind of been limited a lot this season during the midweek.
Yep.
You know, McCaffrey's
All
dealing with
long.
that knee. Same thing with Eckler, but they'll both be good to go here. I would assume come Sunday.
Eckler's was an estimate too, so it wasn't even. They did walk. I'm pretty sure walkthroughs mostly around the NFL on Tuesday, so you could do whatever you want on those estimated practice reports.
Yeah. So again, I think we're pretty okay there with any of these top price guys. Maybe the one I'd fade again is Josh Jacobs against the 49ers. Not too keen on Nick Chubb there against Washington. Always just kind of a contrarian play this season if you want to go there. But the top two guys are clear. What's your take on Saquon Barkley, though? Are you paying the $8K for Barkley against the Colts?
I mean, if you can, it's, even in a game where he only has 14 carries, he has 10 targets. And I think we're seeing Daniel Jones get him involved in the passing game more. It's something they said they wanted to do early on, and they didn't. But 18 targets in the last 2 games. So throw it out to, like, the meme is, like, throw it. DeAndre's down there somewhere, right? Instead, for the Giants, it's Saquon's in the flat somewhere.
Right.
So, I would play Saquon. It's not the best spot in the world, but I think it's viable. I really like the tier below. Like, if James Conner clears this illness, 7,200, still getting all the volume.
Yeah.
And
25 Colt McCoy now back at quarterback.
And Colt McCoy back at quarterback. 5+ targets in 4 of his last 5 and in 3 straight. He plays like 99% of the snaps.
Yeah, they don't have anybody else. Yeah.
They have no one else. Love that. Love Dalvin. Green Bay can't stop a nosebleed. Dalvin just stops himself by fumbling. That's the only thing that, like, Dalvin, he needs to not lose fumbles. And then chalk of the week, drum roll please, Cam Akers, right? Everyone plays Cam Akers at 61 against the Chargers.
So I think everybody just plugs in the 2 running backs right there. Travis Etienne gets Houston.
Yep, and Cam Akers
gets the Chargers.
And that allows you to play Fields, right? That's like your build. Like, you play Fields, and then you play those 2 running backs, and you're like still comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a pretty popular play this week in this range for sure. Obviously, if Aaron Jones doesn't suit up, AJ Dillon's at $5,800. He'll be pretty popular. People will still be chasing Jerick McKinnon. I mean, the guy last week still found the end zone. Wasn't as explosive, obviously, as the 2 weeks prior. But against Denver in Week 14, he had the 112-2 scores on the receiving game. One of those was that 56-yard flip that Mahomes was basically going out of bounds, and it was like, wait a minute, Jerick McKinnon's right there, and McKinnon took it to the house. So, $6K, I think people will still be kind of following that spot there for him as well. A decent opportunity. After that, though, again, I don't really love a lot of what's below that, like, 6K range. Lenny Fournette's still getting a lot of volume in terms of passing down work. He had 10 targets, 9 catches there, 20 carries for 72 yards. He himself came out, though, admitted he's dealing with a Liz Frank injury that he's playing through.
And then deleted it. Did you see that? He reneged and deleted the tweet immediately following. Yeah. I think someone on the PR team was like, Lenny, nobody knows about the Liz Frank. Please delete that.
Because they're about to be fined for not listing him on the injury report. But I mean, like, we talked about it too. Looking at him run against Arizona last week, like when he was out in the open field, like he's running like a hurt man, right? Like he doesn't have that typical, like, bulldoze explosiveness.
No juice.
But still, 20 carries and 10 targets, 25 fantasy points in PPR. Fournette, if you like Tampa Bay, you can play him with Tom Brady. A lot of people are always like, you can't stack the quarterback and the running back together. Well, you can when the running back's getting 10 targets. Like, it's an extension of the passing game here. So, I do like both of those guys. And I think you can play Tyler Algier at $5,300.
He's the clear-cut number 1 option.
He's out-touching Patterson now. He get more snaps. 17 for 139, 18 for 74. A good spot here against Arizona. So I like Algier as well. What's your take on DeAndre Swift if Jamal Williams doesn't play?
I mean, it's just hard to. We understand the talent of DeAndre Swift. We understand what he can be, what he was last year. He was a league winner last year. He's just not that guy this year, pal. He's not that guy, right? Like, Justin Jackson was getting reps in front of with Jamal Williams hurt. So, like, I don't know. Like, you can in tournaments. It's just not safe. Like, he's going to be involved in the passing game, but we haven't seen the explosive passing game play like earlier this year. Week 1, there's a 25-yard catch. There's a 22-yard catch. Last 3 weeks, 13, 8, 15 is the long. He just doesn't look as explosive, and they're just not using him as much. So, like, you can use him. I think he's fine. Another guy I would use for $100 cheaper, depending on the Antonio Gibson status, because he didn't practice Wednesday. He's been dealing with knee and foot. Cleveland is not good against the run.
No.
And Brian Robinson runs a lot. And if there's no, we saw Jonathan Williams get carries last year. Like, even in a game that they lost by 17 points, Brian Robinson had 22 carries. Yeah. And I know he's not like heavily involved in the passing game.
No, he's had 9 catches in 11 games.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. He's a zero there. But if we get a 21-96 and a score, or like he had against Atlanta where he gets 18-105, Cleveland's allowed the 6th most rushing yards this year. They've allowed 15 touchdowns this year, which is the 3rd most. Yep. And they do allow a lot of receptions in the passing game. So it's there. If there's no Antonio Gibson, that part of the game could be there for Brian Robinson.
So I just plugged in. Again, we're going to be building a lineup like we do at the end of this podcast every week. I plugged in, before you even mentioned Brian Robinson, I plugged in Cam Akers, Travis Etienne, and Brian Robinson in my flex.
I mean, he's a good play.
This was a spot to use him. Plus, we didn't mention Carson Wentz. I think you could probably play Carson Wentz if you wanted to at quarterback this week against Cleveland. Again, the way to beat Cleveland has been to run the football, not necessarily throw the football. And Carson's 51 when we've talked about Minshew and those guys, in like 55, a better spot to do. But Carson at least can push the ball downfield a little bit more. And that creates red zone opportunities maybe for Brian Robinson there. Yep. So I do like Brian Robinson a lot at that low 5K range. Does Mike White come back, help Zonovan Knight regain any form here? $5,100 against Seattle.
Maybe. It just doesn't – I don't know if it just feels like a spot that we need to go there, because I think we've seen it, and we saw it against Jacksonville with them trailing, they go to Michael Carter. And Michael Carter was involved in the passing game. And will that be the case here? I don't know. I mean, Seattle's super banged up. They didn't have Kenneth Walker at practice. They didn't have Tyler Lockett after like his miraculous recovery. Get surgery last week, was catching passes without pain, but didn't practice. So like, if Seattle's without those guys, maybe it's a better game environment for Knight, and we see a lot of carries, but I don't know if it's a situation we really need to.
Sure. Yeah, I just look at the 3 games quarterback by Mike White. He went 14 for 69. You went 15 for 90 and 17 for 71. Mike White gets hurt. Zach Wilson goes back under center, and teams are like, yeah, Zach Wilson, try to throw on us. We'll just stop the run here. Detroit and Jacksonville shut down Zonovan Knight. So I think he's going to be a contrarian play this week.
Okay.
Potentially for tournaments. Again, not a core lineup play. Do not put him in your core lineup. But if you're making a few lineups out there and you want to pivot off of a Brian Robinson, who I do think will be pretty popular this week, or an Algier, who I like, I think Zonovan Knight maybe has a little juice there.
I think there could be another value too, depending on the Miles Sanders status, who did not participate with a knee injury.
Yeah, we going Gainwell or Boston Scott?
Trey Sermon. I mean, Gainwell has been getting more snaps lately, and he's just been more involved in the rushing game this year. But I think you could.
We've seen weird things though, where a guy goes down, and Scott's actually the backup running back, and Gainwell's like the change of pace guy, and then all of a sudden, Sanders goes out, and it's actually Scott that gets the work. So, I think you're not
both.
wrong on Sermon though. Didn't Sermon get some touches a couple?
He has two. He has 2 carries. Two carries this year.
I guess I lied on that one. I thought there was a point where he actually got in on a Sanders game, but. Yeah, both of those guys will be interesting. Good news for my FSGA team because I do have Boston Scott on that roster. So, if he can find his way to some touches there, he actually scored for. That's a best ball team. The points actually counted the week. He scored a touchdown against the Giants. He had 10 fantasy points that week, rushing touchdown. So
all he does is score against the Giants. So week 18, when they have the division clinched up and you're playing DFS, you better have Boston Scott in line. I'll tell you that.
Chuba Hubbard, any interest?
He's been really good. Just again, he's there's been weeks where back-to-back weeks he had 3 targets, 12 carries. He's still behind Deonta Foreman by a considerable margin. Foreman just 20 carries weekly. But as long as he has the big play, 10 yards a carry, not sustainable. I think against Tampa, I also think it's more likely Foreman's in on the goal line. Foreman has 5 touchdowns, so you can play Chuba Hubbard. I still think Foreman's the alpha in that offense, though.
All right, let's go to wide receiver here. Guys at the top, we got Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. Kind of all in either tough matchups or quarterback issues there.
You play Jefferson of the 3. I don't think you could play Adams with Stidham. Super contrarian play.
Week 1, Jefferson went in for 184 and 2 scores against Green Bay. So
that's week 1. I thought that was week 1 through 16.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
That's not. Close. You can play Jefferson against in any spot. You could play like any of these guys.
The Tyreek Hill one's interesting because the Patriots are yesterday missing 3 of their starting quarterbacks. Marcus Jones, Jack Jones, and Jalen Mills all were out of practice yesterday. So
yeah, and Hill had 177 with 12 receptions with Teddy Bridgewater week 6.
Yeah.
Minnesota, by the way, just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Another quarterback that just lights up Minnesota.
Was that it? Bridgewater had 300 yards against Minnesota.
I don't know, but probably. Wouldn't shock me.
I think he did. I think Bridgewater had 300 against Minnesota.
It would not shock me if that was a Bridgewater game. It probably makes sense.
Week 6 against Minnesota, 329 yards.
Again, another trash quarterback throwing for 300 yards against Minnesota.
Shout out
Aaron Rodgers is going to do it. He's going to do it. But you know what? If you don't want to invest in Aaron Rodgers, definitely play one of the receivers this week, right?
Right. Agreed.
Probably Romeo Doubs. I think he's under 5K. So yes, any of those guys are good to go at the top, except for Devontae Adams. You're not going to play Devontae Adams. Play Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill. We're good. I'm on Ross St. Brown. Like I said, I think he's the highest rostered wide receiver on the board this week. I think he'll be 30%, 40%. Against this matchup already on the road, he went for 119 yards on 10 catches.
Yep.
Just absolute stud week in, week out. Good price at $7,800 for sure. DeAndre Hopkins, after being pretty much off my board, on my board now with Colt McCoy here. So I don't mind Hopkins. Again, I don't think anyone's going to play him because he can play St. Brown for $100 more, but I feel a lot better with him with Colt McCoy at QB. He had 1 catch on 10 targets last week. That's McSorley.
Pretty good. 1 catch, 10 targets.
Yeah. Mid-tier guys, Devonta Smith's good even with Grande. AJ Brown's good with Gardner Minshew. Like both of those guys are going to be fine.
Keenan Allen's a machine. A machine right now.
Yeah. Guys, just an animal when it comes to catching.
Herbert literally just stares at him. Like when you watch that, they just stare. Like I know Mike Williams is there and he chucks the ball down the field to Mike Williams. Keenan Allen, they lock eyes immediately as the ball snaps. Mm-hmm. Every snap.
Yep. No arguments here. Metcalf's going to get the sauce treatment, so we probably don't go Metcalf this week.
Would you play Lockett if he plays?
Yeah.
Because,
if he's playing, I assume he's good to go.
This is unheard of. Has surgery on the hand and is catching passes a week later. He didn't practice, but Pete Carroll is out here saying, yeah, he was catching passes. He wasn't wincing when he was catching passes.
Here's the weird thing, right? Lockett was listed as a non-participant in the walkthrough practice. And then the analysis, Pete Carroll told Bon Condon of the Seattle Times earlier Wednesday, Lockett did everything in the team's walkthrough and looked great.
Yep.
So what walkthrough was that? Was that the Tuesday walkthrough? Or was that
So it was Wednesday morning. He was catching. The initial report came out that he was catching passes and was doing stuff in the walkthrough. And then the late report on Wednesday was hey, by the way, didn't practice. So I think maybe there was they were probably maybe testing him out on the side with the passes and stuff. Because the report was like he was catching passes and throwing the football with his
broken hand,
surgically repaired hand. And there was no wincing or anything. Like he was just normal, which is, again, just that's recovery, Russell Wilson, Wolverine blood recovery stuff. But if he plays, you're right. Metcalf's getting sauce. Lockett is going to run around. That's, They wrote me off. I ain't right back, though, Gino to Lockett all day.
Yeah, for sure. I like Godwin and Evans. Good prices, 68, 65. Again, I like Tom Brady better at home. Godwin's actually got even home road splits this season. Evans, 15 fantasy points at home, 10 away. Not many touchdowns, but he's on pace for, once again, over 1,000 yards receiving this year. So
Evans is the contrarian option of those two for sure.
Yes,
everyone's going to play Godwin.
100%, especially how close the price is. Just $300 difference between the two. Something to watch. Deebo Samuel, we got that report yesterday, could return to practice today. I don't know if that ever happened or not.
We'll San Francisco practices West Coast, so it'll be we'll get the late report from San Fran about his practice.
If Deebo Samuel practices and then finds his way to being active, would you spend the $6K on Deebo Samuel?
Probably. It's really cheap. Obviously, you have to assume his rushing volume is not there, just coming off.
Because they don't need him to play this game, right?
They don't. Well, they can't. Well, they can still lock up the 1 seed, depending on the Philly game. If Philly wins, and they need Philly and Minnesota to lose out, and they need to win out, and they can be the 1 seed.
I just don't think they need Deebo to beat Las Vegas.
No, I don't. No, they don't.
So if they put him out,
Stidham,
I don't know why they would risk putting him out there unless he was ready to go. So something to watch there, but $6K is a super cheap price tag.
Incredibly cheap
for Deebo Samuel there. So some mild interest in tournaments is like a 1 of 20 dart throw.
Yep.
If Christian Watson does find his way into the game here, maybe, but he has been practicing. So tough to go ahead and trust that one there. I think Hollywood Brown's back in play with Colt McCoy at 55. Garrett Wilson with Mike White back.
Oh, best friends. They're literally best friends.
Really, really great potential for him here in this spot.
26, 27, 14 fantasy points, right? With Mike White. So, the proof is in the pudding.
Yep. And he's and because he had to deal with that shitty Zach Wilson the last 2 weeks, his price tag is now $5,500 instead of the $6K that it was. So you're getting the cheapest price he's been in 4 weeks right now for Garrett Wilson. Alan Lazard, 11 targets last week, 5 for 61 against Miami. Again, gets Minnesota here this week. He's at $5,400. Again, some really good mid-tier wide receiver options. Certainly making it easier to spend up at quarterback if you want to go there. Maybe some redemption for Jacksonville wide receivers after the rain and win game in New York last week. Drake London is the only guy catching footballs right now from Desmond Ridder. 7 for 96 last week, 7 for 70 the week before. I haven't played any Drake London all season long, but if Ridder's only throwing to him, maybe there's some interest there.
Yeah, I mean, look at the last 3 weeks. He's balling. But it's just, again, they just don't score. Atlanta has 18 points or less in 4 straight games. It's just, we're not relying upon a touchdown here. I know he had 4 earlier in the year, but it doesn't look like it's coming right now. The volume's great, though, so nothing bad to say there.
Brandon Cooks found the end zone last week, returned after missing 4 games, 4 catches, 9 targets, 34 yards, and a touchdown. He's got Jacksonville here. Again, just cheap price tag. He's a talented wide receiver, so some skill there. Romeo Doubs, as I said, I think he'll be chalk at 47. I think a lot of people will be plugging in Romeo Doubs here. Played 61% of the offensive snaps last week. Christian Watson missed the entire second half. We know that we've seen him and Rodgers connect a few times this season. So big fan of Doubs. And then we go to these Washington guys. We skipped over McLaurin, but kind of intentionally for me, because with Carson Wentz, we saw both Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel have a lot of success earlier this season. And then we see Carson Wentz in the second half take over last week, and Samuel finds the end zone and has 5 for 52. So Curtis Samuel at 44, Jahan Dotson at 46, 2 more guys that I really like.
Yeah, and you know what? If Gibson sits, Samuel could be heavily involved in the rushing attack too.
He could be that third down pass back sort of, right?
So, we've seen 1, 2. He's rushed the ball 5 times, twice this year. Like, could we see 4 times, a whole bunch more? I think Samuel is kind of an elite play at 44.
Yeah. Love.
I'm with you on Dotson too, but like almost just the fact that Samuel, if Gibson doesn't play, he will be used in the running game is very intriguing.
Samuel probably better for cash games. I mean, you got to love Dotson comes back in 3 straight touchdowns. Like the man has 7 touchdowns on the year and he's only played half the games. I mean, it's just
25-yard reception in all 3 of those games.
He's got a nose for the end zone. And again, he opened the year with 4 touchdowns in 4 weeks before getting hurt there. And Carson Wentz, as we know, was targeting him. So love Dotson in tournaments. Love Samuel in cash. I'm not skipping over your Giants guys on purpose. Do you like them against Indy though?
They're okay. I think there's a lot of really, really good plays in this tier. Like I would play Isaiah Hodgins over all of them. I mean, Hodgins has 3 touchdowns in 4 games.
Out of all of the
Giants pass. Okay. Out of the Giants pass catchers, sorry. Specifically. Like Slayton's 49. I know he has big playability, but Hodgins is getting all the red zone looks, and then Richie James drops so many passes. I know he had 8 for 12 or 8 receptions for 90 yards, and that's cool and stuff, but it's just a nightmare sometimes.
It is a nightmare. I agree with you on that one. DJ Chark, really good spot for DJ Chark this week. Another, again, 100 yards last week. I mean, just
on the field. Yeah, he's just on the field. Doing things.
Home, the 2 of the last home games for him, 5 for 98, 6 for 94 and a score. So, definitely a fan of DJ Chark there. Some really great values on this slate here this week. Makes it interesting, I guess, where the roster ship's going to go when it comes to spending up and spending down. Any other value wide receivers for you that you're maybe on your radar here?
I'm just going through. I mean, what do we do with Kendrick Bourne?
Sure.
Devontae Parker not available at practice again on Wednesday. Not a good sign, especially, he could obviously upgrade to limited on Thursday, and that's progressing in concussion protocol, but no signs pointing to that yet. So Kendrick Bourne, 6 receptions, 9 targets, 100 yards and a score last week, and he had the 29-yard rush as well. So Jameson Williams obviously hasn't shown anything but that one big touchdown, but he was the first receiver off the board. Like, we love Jared Goff in this spot. Those are probably the only 2. Like, I'm not chasing the Greg Dortch game. I don't know about you.
No, I'm not chasing Greg Dortch game. No, I'm definitely not doing that. Tight end here. Kelsey's your top guy. Gets Denver. Good spot for him. Even though he didn't come through really last game against Denver, 4 for 71. Last 2 weeks, though, 6 for 113, 10 for 105. He's 8,100. Big price tag for
big price tag, but like you could do it if you're playing those running backs. I think there was a lot of value running backs. There's a lot of value receivers too.
Yep, I agree with you. George Kittle maybe in the best spot though. Again, talking about tight ends against bad teams. The Raiders really struggling against tight ends. We saw them give up the 3 touchdowns. Or not the Raiders. Did the Raiders lose to the Rams last week? No, Denver.
No,
Denver lost to the Rams. The Raiders. Who did they just lose to? The Raiders.
They lost to. They got torched.
A tight end did tear them apart. I felt like
they lost to. They lost to Pittsburgh. Okay, with that last second touchdown.
Yeah. I think Freiermuth had a good game, but regardless, the Raiders have struggled against tight ends all season long. Kittle's got touchdowns and 2 touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. So if Deebo Samuel remains out, big targets here for Kittle, for Brock Purdy. I really like that matchup for him there. Hawkinson's getting a lot of targets. I like that. Kmet, $4,500, maybe a little bit more expensive, but a good matchup for him against Detroit. Any other tight ends for you? There isn't a lot of value at the tight end position this week, really.
I mean, obviously, Evan Ingram. If Jacksonville's playing their starters at full capacity, I think that's something to monitor. I know Doug Peterson came out and was like, I'm not resting guys unless they're hurt. It's like, all right, dude, well, like, this game doesn't matter. Right. So if you do that and someone gets hurt, you're going to feel like an asshole. So Evan Ingram, 44, if he's going to play full capacity. I don't really like anything else.
Yeah, I mean, like I did think Noah Fant was interesting, but he was also a non-participant at Wednesday's practice. So like with Will Disley on IR, I was ready to say Noah Fant. If Noah Fant finds his way on the field, I don't mind it at 34. Coop said he liked Trey McBride because McCoy had been targeting him, but it feels like a very low floor
Very. I mean, he has even in the games that he has been targeted because he has. I mean, 5.8 fantasy points and 9.5 in the 2 games.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Logan
Jordan
Thomas had 6 targets from Carson Wentz in the second half of that game. He only had 6 for 35 on 8 targets, but $3,100 for.
Yeah, he's a big red zone guy. I mean, we saw the second half tight end 1 Logan Thomas from a couple years ago. He scored a lot of touchdowns. So I like him. Honestly, like I told you on Monday Night Football, I like Jelani Woods.
Say Jelani Woods, huh?
Dart throw on Jelani Woods. I think it was clear cut that Nick Foles practiced with Jelani Woods a lot, right? The first target of the game was a 20-yard reception to Jelani Woods.
Yeah.
15-yard, almost or 14 yards of reception for Jelani Woods in that game. He's averaging 14 yards a catch, or 13 and a half yards a catch. He has 2 big games on his ledger. That would probably be the only punt for me if unless Noah Fant. Where is Noah Fant priced? 34?
Yeah.
It's not even a punt. So the only thing under 3K that I see is Jelani Woods.
Okay. I don't disagree really with that assessment at all. Let's go to defense and finish this off. Top price guys, obviously, I mean, the Eagles are just all over teams right now. 6-6-7-6 sacks the last 4 games here. Now they go up against Andy Dalton and the Saints. Not probably looking pretty good for that offense here on the road against Philly. Your Giants have Nick Foles. Again, we just saw what Nick Foles looked like. Not great, right? Not great production out of Nick Foles there.
No.
Giants are getting after the quarterback. They're not really turning the ball over. No interceptions in 4 games, but the sacks and we're not expecting many points scored here by Indy. So any other defenses in the top tier for you? Top price tier at least, not necessarily top tier overall.
Jacksonville, I think, is interesting. 3,600. Jacksonville has forced a lot of turnovers, and 4 interceptions over the last 3 games. They've had 4 fumble recoveries over those last 3 games too. 8 turnovers last 3 games. They've scored double-digit fantasy points in those, and we know Houston is just abysmal offensively. So I'd probably say just those teams. Interesting to see the Patriots priced where they are. I guess that's probably factoring in Tua. But if Bridgewater is at under center and New England gets their corners on the field, New England 2,600, dude.
Patriots lead the league in defensive touchdowns with 7. They have 50 sacks. They're among the league leaders in sacks. They 3 straight games of defensive touchdowns. They're a team that will give up 20 points, but they
score. They score touchdowns.
Yeah, they score touchdowns. So I don't mind them. Also, I mean, the 49ers are $2,900. I mean, that's like.
Wait, what the?
So here's the thing, right? On FanDuel, the 49ers are the most expensive defense. On DraftKings, they're $2,900.
But Derek Carr was the starter prior to
all of this, right? So I don't know how the 49ers aren't 100% rostered on DraftKings.
Yeah, it's lock and load.
That's just too cheap for what I mean. Again, they're already one of the best teams in football. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me here. So
yeah, that's a lock and load. Just let's build with the Niners.
All right, so I got a lineup built already, James.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right, Jared Goff, $5,600.
Okay,
we're going chalk, by the way. This is
I will. You already said the running back, so we're definitely going chalk.
Yeah. Jared Goff, Cam Akers, Travis Etienne, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Alan Lazard. I can be swayed a little bit, but I have Jahan Dotson as my wide receiver 3. Okay. I did George Kittle at tight end, Brian Robinson at flex, and the 49ers defense is $100 left over. The only thing I'm slightly wishy-washy on is the Dotson-Robinson-Washington combo.
Yeah.
But I can be moved off of maybe either of them. I do like Robinson a lot. Dotson and GBPs, though, just, the touchdowns, they're just there for him, so.
Yeah, it's definitely the touchdowns.
What's the can you tell me the Dotson snap count for the last couple of weeks?
Yes.
See if his snap share has been on, because he was playing 100% of the snaps earlier in the year.
So Jahan Dotson last week played 86% of the snaps. It's the most he's played since returning from injury. Okay. He's played 79, 79, 86 the last 3 weeks.
Okay.
So he's on the field all the time.
Nice. I can also move off of Dotson and double stack Lions wide receivers. I can go St. Brown and Chark with Goff.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that.
Makes a little bit more sense, probably.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. I think it's going to be hard. I think if we were to pair a receiver with Brian Robinson, it'd probably be Samuel, just given the fact that Gibson just officially not practicing again Thursday, John.
Okay.
And I think Samuel, just being more possession guy, would still factor in, like if even in like a run heavy format, just like move the chains type of scenario. So I agree with the Chark moving to Chark there.
Okay.
And that's that's how we're gonna get contrarian.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you because there's going to be playing those guys down there in that 4K range. So, lineup that I got here, James, I got Jared Goff, Cam Akers, Travis Etienne, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Alan Lazard, DJ Chark doing the double up there for the Lions stack, George Kittle, Brian Robinson in the 49ers defense. $400 left over to play with if everybody wants to go ahead and get a little different with the lineup here. Anything for you, James, that you would maybe change? Any other stacks that you kind of like over what we got going on there?
Nothing I would change. I think, as you mentioned, it's going to be a popular one, just given the game environment in this one. The more you were talking about the Green Bay stack, I do like a Green Bay stack with Dalvin Cook coming back as or Justin Jefferson coming back, however you want to approach that, because Green Bay's not expensive if you did like a Rodgers, Lazard, Romeo Doubs stack, as long as Christian Watson's out. But I like the lineup we have as currently constructed. I'm just thinking outside the box. The more and more you talked about Rodgers, this feels like the first time he's going to have a 300-yard game this year.
Yeah, no, completely understand. So, cool. That's our lineup here for week 17. Again, we'll have the playbook out on Saturday in the dartboard. I'm filling in for Howard Bender this week on both of those. The watch list has been out. On Sunday morning, you find myself and Andrew Cooper with the game day playbook, a live stream from 9 to 11, and catch us there with all the updated news, breaking down everything, the matchups, and answering your start state questions. Week 17 for DFS. It's also championship week for fantasy football seasonal, so a big week there. If you have any questions, find us in the Discord there as well. But James and I will be back and around. Catch you guys later.